And Joe, as my real name is, as I'm known. Let's see here. Everything looks like it's up and running. Sweet. Flying solo again this week, unfortunately. Just streams are just starting a little bit later now that these days. I can't get the stream going quick enough when Eli's up, but we'll get him back on here. We'll have some fun with him. But it kind of works out in the long run because we're talking about the Friday Night Magic results and how the deck changes and things like that for our Dino deck. And I know that's something that he's not entirely interested in. I mean, he's interested in building the deck and how it's going and things like that. But getting down to the actual card changes and stuff like that wouldn't be as interesting. He's more into like the opening packs and stuff like that. And which we do have. Looks like we still have 6 packs of Hour of Devastation to open up, and looks like 4 packs of Rivals of Ixalan. So we've got some packs to open up here for him. So we'll get that started next time he's on. But in the meantime, I really appreciate you guys watching. If you're in the Facebook chat, how's everybody doing? Twitch, twitch.tv/72DPI online. Thanks guys for watching. Or if you're watching in the future on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/72DPI online. How you guys doing out there? We really appreciate you watching. Make sure you get subscribed to the channel if you're into the magic content, or if you're just a gamer in general, board games, tabletop games, video games, stuff like that. We have a lot of entertainment on the channel for you to consume, and there's a lot more coming. There's a lot more things in the works coming up down the road. So it's a good time to get subscribed. Leave us a message with your thoughts about the channel in the comments below. But let's jump right into it. Well, there's my notes. Where did my notes go? So let's talk a little bit about how this past Friday went. If you guys go back to episode 36, I talked about how we did, in our first F&M with the deck and things like that. We went 1-3 last week or 2 weeks ago. This week we went 1-3. However, we got a first round bye, so we really went 0-3. I don't count byes as wins because we didn't play Magic. So yeah, it was a little rough. We did win some games, which isn't to say the deck is bad. We might have made some missed choices on our changes last week. So one of the big things that we changed and that I decided on that it was more important was to be more aggro and get rid of the Kajali's Caller. Let's see here. It's the one drop. Let's see if I can find it. Kajali's Caller. There it is. Kajali's Caller is a 1 drop it's an 0/3. All dinosaurs you cast cost 1 less to play. So the idea behind taking out some of the Otepec's Huntmasters, the 1/2, we'll talk about that in a second, is we dropped down 2 of the Huntmasters to bring in 2 of something else. It's the Forerunner, but at any rate, we'll get to that in just a second. So we decided that this was the more powerful card that we wanted to go with over the Huntmaster, and mostly because while the Huntmaster does the exact same thing, we have quite a few 2-drops that are competing for that slot. And what the Huntmaster is doing, it does the exact same thing. So the Caller just reduces cost to the dinosaurs by 1. It's an 0/3. It's a great blocker. It's a great early game to kind of fend off against like the Ramanat, not the Ramanat Reds, the red decks with their very small creatures. It stops early attack of usually the first attack on the energy decks and things like that. So we decided to only go 2 of the Huntmasters. Only because we didn't think haste was that big of a thing, right? Haste really wasn't a big deal. We weren't really getting into that type of combat with our opponents, where we'd play a creature, say go, now we're attacking or we're losing our creatures and things like that. So we decided to go down to 2. Well, kind of reverse that thought process, and we want to be a little more on the offensive. With our attacks and our plays, mostly because of how game 2 went. So game 3 rather. It would be our second match. But before we get into too much of the changes, so some of the things that brought about this thought process was in game 3 we played against a green-black energy deck, an energy constrictor deck. What the constrictor does is basically anytime a token would be placed on a creature, you put another one on top of it. So the constrictor basically allows you to double up and make your creatures much stronger. So what we were running into is, these creatures were just getting out of control way too fast. We weren't able to defend off against the larger ones at the end of the game. Our aggro plan was on point, where the first game that we played, we did 14 damage during turns 2 and turns 3 or 3 and 4 with our Ceratops. So the beginning of the game went great. And once we get to the later game, we kind of fell behind because we were playing creatures at the same rate they were playing creatures, and we didn't have any way of, increasing our chances of attacking, because we would play a creature, pass a turn, they'd play a creature, pass a turn, and we weren't able to kind of go back and forth. What's up, Gretchen? So we went ahead and upped our count on the Otopex Huntmasters from 2 to 4, hoping that we aren't gonna be playing any of the callers anymore. But the good news is, with our aggro plan that we had for that game, that round 3, that first match, the 1-drop slot didn't matter at all, right? Because the Ceratops doesn't use the caller, doesn't use the Huntmaster at all. It's literally let's see here if I can find it. I don't know I think that was a Rivals card. Let's see if I've got it pulled up. I don't see it. Let's see what was it called. But anyway, it doesn't use the actual caller, because it costs 2. And there goes Siegehorn. That's what it was. So it doesn't use that actual. It doesn't take advantage of that actual card. So playing the caller on turn 1 and playing this on turn 2 doesn't make any sense. So we're kind of shifting our focus a little bit in the early game. We're going away from that 1-drop. We've increased our. So we took out all 4 of the callers. We've increased to 4 of the Huntmasters. For late game purposes, and then to kind of fill the void. Let's see here. To fill the void for the turn 1 instead of the caller, we upped our commune with the dinosaurs to 4. I think we were playing 3, so we put that back up to 4. So we're either searching out land or we're searching out a finisher or whatever on that top 5 card. So kind of excited. This is the original format of this deck was green red. So it's going back to where it was originally. So kind of makes me happy about that. So let's go back into like some of the matches and things like that. So we talked about round 3, game 1, game 2 went super long, and like I said, the the Green Gearhulk and the Constructor were really bad news for our deck. We had answers for them, but we just couldn't get enough damage in. And at the end of the game, they beat us out by a couple points only because they were able to get those threats on the board and ultimately eliminate our threats via playing more creatures, bigger creatures. So I'm hoping the Huntmaster fixes that deal by being able to attack with our creatures sooner. Commune of the Dinosaurs will get us a land in our hand so that we can definitely curve out towards the middle to late game. So round 2, we played against the blue-white, or black-white, excuse me. It's been a long day, guys. We played against a black-blue Approach the Second Sun deck. So what this card does is, if you're not familiar with it, let's see here. It is from Rivals of Ixalan. It's a sorcery. It's in white. And it's a really odd card. Let's see here. If I can find it. Do I not have it downloaded? That's strange. Rivals. Was it in Ixalan? Don't see it. Let me download it real quick, because that's strange. I usually have it pulled up. I apologize. Anyway, well, let's just skip it. So, Approach of the Second Sun. Essentially, you pay 7, I believe it's 7 mana, 1 white, and 7 or 6 generic. And you cast it from your hand, and if you've cast a card that is of the same name, if it's the second time you've cast the card, you win the game on the spot, right? You don't even have to resolve it. The card can be countered, whatever. As long as it's been cast, you've won the game. The interesting part about the card is if it's the first time you've cast it, it goes to the 7th card from the top of your library, and you gain 7 life. So in 7 turns, if you don't draw any cards other than at the beginning of your turn, you're going to get it on turn 7 and be able to cast it again. So we got wiped out both of these games. And of course, I mean, we have Gideon's Intervention in our deck, which allows us to name a card, and players can't cast that card. We can't be dealt damage by that card. We never drew it, unfortunately. In Game 2, I mean, we went through a good chunk of our deck. I think we played all of our Commune with the Dinosaurs. I mean, we went through a good chunk of our deck, and we didn't see it. So I don't know if we need to add an additional one, bump it up to 3. But what I'm thinking is, rather than bumping that up to 3, we want to be, like I said, we want to be a little more proactive with our attacks. So one of the cards, and I didn't actually check. I didn't check any of these cards to see if they were in. This one's in here. So one of the cards that I'm going to add to the sideboard is Snapping Sailbag, and it's a weird card to add because it's super expensive at 5 mana for a 4/4, but it has Flash and Enrage, which Enrage goes along with our deck's like main focus, right? So if it gets dealt damage, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it must survive to add the +1/+1 counter. So it's like a beefier version of the Siegehorn Ceratops, but it has Flash, and the reason why this is important is because when your opponent's tapping out, or countering spells, or maybe they clear the board or whatever, this gives you an option to play it after they've cleared the board, put a threat down, and hopefully attack into their creatures. This on its face value, against the approach decks, isn't going to get in a is not going to tangle with creatures, because that deck doesn't play creatures, at least in Game 1 or Game 2. Like, they're very, very little creatures. There's a couple of torrential Gearhulks and stuff like that. But this will be able to get in before those cards come down, especially if I have like the Huntmasters and things like that. So the cost of this isn't going to be 5. It should be 4, maybe 3 on a good day. But being able to drop this at the end of their turn and getting in some damage before they actually, kind of like my thought process is, turn 2, you're casting the Huntmaster. Turn 3, you're casting the Siegehorn, and then turn 4, you're casting on their turn 4, you're casting the Sailback and swinging in for a massive amount of damage on the swing back, hopefully killing them before they can get to their 7 mana approach. The only card that you have to worry about is Settle the Wreckage, which is a hard. It's not really that hard of a card to play around. It's a 4 mana, 2 white, 2 generic instant. Just says exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search his or her library for that many basic land, put them into play tapped, and then shuffle his library. So while it does slow us down, it's easy to kind of read into. If they have 4 untapped mana, it's probably not a smart thing to do. However, with this deck, having the extra mana is never a bad thing, right? And that's one of the things that you worry about with this deck is when you get to the late game, you're top decking cards. You're like, okay, I just top decked a land. I just top decked a Huntmaster. I just top decked a Savage Stomp or whatever. It kind of feels bad. But with the changes that we're making here, if we do get hit with that Settle the Wreckage on turn 4 or turn 5, it's not all that bad because we're gonna gather 2 or 3 extra lands, which is gonna reduce our land count, so that we're in the mid to late game drawing actual good cards to affect the board and hopefully win the game. So the Sailback, going back to the Sailback, that's going to be in our sideboard. We're going to add 3 of those. We're going to take out, for now, we're going to take out the Thrashing Brontodon. He was the, from Rivals, he was the 3 mana, come on mouse, work with me here. Let's see here, Thrashing. Oh, not him. That is Thrash, but not Thrashing. Let's see here. Thrashing. This is Ixalan. We want Rivals of Ixalan. There we go. Thrashing Brontodon. All right, so that's the crappier version. But anyway, you get the idea. So it's a 3/4 for 3 mana. You can pay 1, sacrifice, and destroy an artifact enchantment. It's not really all that important. It does work against Torrential Gearhulks, which is nice, and it's unfortunate that I'm going to have to lose out on that ability. But that is a 1. I think that's the only deck that I'd actually side him in for is the Approach of the Second Sun, and that would only be if I was playing against a blue deck that had Gearhulks in it, just because those are about the only artifacts that this deck would struggle with. But I think the Sailback would be great against like other aggro decks because it's a 4/4 that comes down. It could come down as early as turn 3. If the card or turn 4 if the cards are played right, and it just kind of catches people off guard with the flash. They can't really, it's an uncommon, it's an very unplayed card, but I believe it might be an integral piece to like this puzzle. The other thing that we did to the main deck is we added an extra Savage Stomp. That's from Ixalan proper. Savage Stomp is really, it's in this deck, it's a 1 mana, you get a +1/+1 on one of your dinosaurs and it fights another creature you don't control. So in the early game, like for instance, when I said we dealt the 14 damage on turn 3 and 4 in round 3, essentially we played the Ceratops and then we Savage Stomped their lion or their long tusk cub, and then we attacked in on turn 3 for 7 damage, and then we attacked in again on turn 4 for 7 more damage. So it turned out really well, and we're just going to use it as our premium removal spell because they're really, I mean, obviously the bigger creatures they're going to be harder to deal with, but we're hoping that we can clear the way turns 3, turns 4, and turns 5 with this card. We can combine that with the Sailback and things like that. We've also added an additional one to our sideboard, so we have a full play set available in Game 2 and Game 3. The other card that we added, and that one, I don't even know if I've got a card up for it. Let me, let's see here. Do we have it? Is it in here? Oh, no, it's not in here. Crap. That's unfortunate. Let's see here. I don't know if we've got it anywhere else. Going back here to see if I can find it for you guys. I don't see it, so Brontodon. No, I don't see it. Blast. Oh well. Not worried about it. Heroic Intervention is the card that I want to test out. I think we're going to be able to fit 2 of these in our deck. It's an instant from Aether Revolt. It's got it costs 2 mana, 1 green and 1 colorless. And essentially what it does is not essentially. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. The hexproof really isn't all that important. The indestructible is really what we're kind of looking for here. Just being able to save our guys on Approach of the Second Sun, types of styles of decks, being able to, withstand those, Settle the Wreckage, and those other sorcery speed removal spells that clear the board, because most of the time they're tapping out for that, right? So if you leave up 2 mana and a green mana and a colorless mana, they're not going to be all the wiser, because there's no blues, there's no counter spells and things like that. The Blossoming Defense isn't going to work because it's a mask removal spell, so it's not going to work too much. Work really well with mask removal spells, but this is going to be our answer for those turn 4, turn 5 removal spells against Approach. The other thing that this is going to allow us to do that came up very, very prominent in our 4th game and in our 3rd game. The 3rd game was the green-black energy deck, the Constrictor deck, and then the 4th round that we played was the red-black aggro deck. Which for some reason this aggro deck was very mid-range. He called it aggro. I don't know. The black made it very, very mid-rangey in my opinion. But that's my opinion, and it's his deck. He calls it whatever the hell he wants. But one thing that was prominent was the amount of creatures on the battlefield were kind of gumming up what we could do, especially in that green-black energy deck. And being able to just attack in, just trying to kind of bluff, be like, okay, well, it's Friday Night Magic. I just want to get this over with. I'm just going to attack in and see what happens. And leaving up that 2 mana to cast that spell and kind of catch them off guard, like, oh, well, you just triggered all my enrage abilities. You thought you were going to kill my guys, but they're all indestructible. And hopefully that'll, clear out the way or whatever. So that's kind of my second case scenario for Heroic Intervention. So we'll have 2 of those in the sideboard, but we're looking to hopefully win at least half our games this coming Friday. So that's how it went. I'm not entirely ecstatic with how the deck's turning out. Obviously, there's some shortcomings with the color pair, or the color trio that we're using. There was the other card that I might try, or the other ability that if this more aggro-y doesn't work for us with like the flash ability and things like that, I'm not gonna try and find it. There is a white dinosaur that has flying that's 3 mana for a 2/3 or a 3/2. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it also says permanents your opponent or creatures your opponent's control come to play tapped, which works really well with the aggro cards. But what I'm really after is the +1/+1, or the flying ability. So we might take a look into becoming a mid-range deck, and getting rid of some of those early game cards, and trying to play those mid to late game flyers. The other thing that I considered is taking out the white, or taking out one of the colors, probably white, because most of the enraged creatures are in green and their enraged triggering abilities are in red, so those are a good pair naturally. But taking out the white and adding in either black for like hand disruption with like duress and things like that, or we could add in blue for counter spells. So we could either go those 3 color pair, or those 2 color pairs instead. But I want to try it this way first, and see what we come up with, if we get any better, or have any better games and stuff like that. The good news is, we've only played Approach once. We've played aggro twice, and we've done really good both times. I mean, we ultimately lost the round, but we've fared pretty well against them. So I think I feel like our aggro, our early game, is spot on. And we might completely botch that with taking out the 1-drop 0/3 caller, but I feel like this might help us win some, like, kind of stabilize mid game and push through a couple extra points of damage. So we'll see how it goes, guys. Like I said, I really appreciate you watching. If you head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/72DPI online, get subscribed, leave us a comment. We'll be bringing some more content back to the channel here shortly, especially the podcast, the Mana Drain podcast. Right now we're kind of going through a little bit of a change here in the house, so there's a lot of changes going on. I want to be able to do a couple newer things with you guys and make some new content. So make sure you stay tuned for that stuff, and we will see you guys next Wednesday. In the meantime, stay tuned. We're going to be playing some Super Mario Brothers on the SNES here in just a moment with 8-bit. So we will be back here shortly. Don't go anywhere. Thanks.